Hello, today we will be learning how to graph linear equations in slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form means y equals mx plus b. Okay, go ahead and graphing in slope-intercept form. I'm on page 71 to 72. Remember to add your date. All right, so let's review what slope-intercept form means. So m represents our slope. Remember that means y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then b is the y-intercept. Okay, that's where the line crosses the y-axis. Y and x in slope-intercept form represent a coordinate. Okay, so our steps to graphing in y-intercept form is the first thing we need to do is identify the slope from the equation and the y-intercept. So make sure you pick those two out. The slope is always going to be the coefficient of x, and the y-intercept is going to be the constant. Then our next step is to plot the y-intercept. Step 3 is use the slope to graph additional points. Connect the points and extend the line using arrows both ways. Okay, that's important. We want to connect and extend. A lot of times we tend to just stop when the points are connected, and then remember to put arrows on both ends. Make sure you have all these steps written down. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. So the first thing we need to do is identify the slope. So the slope is always going to be the coefficient in front of x. So my slope is 1/3. And then we need to find the y-intercept, will be the constant. Hey, it's always good to use a ruler when we're drawing lines on graphs. And notice, just like before when we were talking about constants and coefficients, we include the sign in front, so that's a -4. Step 2 is plot the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is -4, so I'm going to plot -4 on my graph first. Step 3 is use the slope to find additional points. Now remember, slope is rise over run. So that means I'm going to go up 1 and then over 3. So you can see that moving from the current point to the next one, okay, and we would just fill the graph that way. So up 1 over 3. And then you can always go in the exact opposite direction. So that would be down 1 and over 3. Your points should form a nice straight line, and it's a good idea to use a ruler to connect them. And then we put arrows on both ends. So you can see that it formed that slope. Okay, let's try the next one. So I need to find my slope. So that's the coefficient here in front of x and my y-intercept. So my slope is 3/5, and my y-intercept is +1 this time. So step 2 is to plot the y-intercept first. So I need to plot 1 on the y-axis. Okay, that's always going to be your starting point. Then my slope is 3/5. So that means I need to go up 3 and then over 5. And it's 5 spaces. And we're going to fill in as many points as we can. So I can't continue to go up, but I can go in the exact opposite direction. So I would go down 3 and then over 5. Okay, and that's as many as I can get in this graph. So I'm going to use a ruler to connect those points and draw a nice straight line across. Okay, our next example, I need to find the slope, which is -2/3, and my y-intercept. Now this is the first example with a negative slope. I'm going to start by graphing that +5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And remember, a negative slope should be going down. So that negative, instead of going up and to the right like I have been, I'm going to now go down, but I still go to the right because it's still a +3 there. So the way this one works is I'm going to go down 2 and to the right 3. I'm going to go down 2 and to the right 3. I can't use the opposite direction here because I can't go up 2. So I'm going to use my ruler, make a nice straight line, and connect those points. And then put my arrows. Okay, another example here. I need to find my slope, which is -4. My y-intercept, which is 3. Okay, and then I start by graphing that +3 on the y-axis. So 1, 2, 3. Now my slope is -4. So I know I need to go down 4, but when we are talking about rise over run, I need to turn this into a fraction. So the way we do that is we just put it over 1. So this really means I go down 4 and then over 1. So that's where I get my next point. Down 4 and to the right 1. And let's see if we can go up 4. 1, 2, 3, no. So we can't go in the exact opposite direction here. So now I'm going to connect these points using a ruler. Okay, again, we got to find our slope and our y-intercept. So the slope this time is 6. Again, we want to make sure it's a fraction, so I'm going to put it over 1. And my y-intercept is -1. We have to start by graphing that y-intercept first. So -1 on the y-axis. Now I'm going to go up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and over 1. So you can see there's 6 spaces over 1. Let's see if we can go in the opposite direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope, we can't quite go that far. So I'm just going, I know that that point though, if I wanted to extend this by 1 would be roughly right there. So that can help me out. So now I'm going to use my ruler to draw a nice straight line. I do want to point out, because sometimes we can have equations that look like this. I ran out of room. Notice that's written in kind of the opposite order, so you still have to recognize that the slope will always be the coefficient in front of x, and the y-intercept is always going to be the constant. Okay, so it would be the same way no matter which way it's written, and sometimes you'll see that. So our slope is -2. Remember, we want to make sure that's a fraction for rise over run when we're graphing. And my y-intercept is -5. Now, just like we've done a number of times so far, you can always make a table and get your points that way. This is just a quicker way to use slope to graph the points. But if you prefer creating the table, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so we have to plot our y-intercept, which is -5. And then my slope is -2, so that means I need to go down 2, but I can't. So this is where we are gonna kind of use the opposite direction only. And you have to make sure you're still creating a negative slope. So that means we're gonna go up 2, but instead of going to the right, we're gonna move to the left. So up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And we can see that I still created that negative slope. Okay, at this time, I would like for you to try these 3 problems. So go ahead and pause the video and try to work out these 3 problems. As you are working out these 3 problems, you might be noticing that there's something slightly different. So remember, our coefficient in front of x in problem 7 is a 1. And our y-intercept in problem 8 would be 0. Okay, so just like what we've previously learned, you're just applying that here. If there's no coefficient, it's a 1. And if there's nothing there, the constant is just 0. Okay, so hopefully you've taken the time, you've paused the video, you've worked out these 3 problems. So let's see how you did. Okay, so your graphs should look like these. One thing to make sure you are solving it correctly is if your y-intercept is negative, it should be on the negative y-axis. If your slope is negative, your line should be going down. So just to look at these, my slope for number 7 should have been 1 over 1, and my y-intercept should have been -2. For number 8, my slope should have been -3 over 1, and my y-intercept should have been 0, so I'm crossing at 0 here. And the last one, your slope should have been -4 over 3, and the y-intercept should have been -5. Okay, hopefully you did well with those. Now let's take a look at some 0 and no slope graphs. So we already talked about what a 0 slope would look like. That should be a horizontal line. And then no slope or undefined should look like a vertical line. When we have the graph of zero slope, the graph or the equation would look like y equals. That's still considered a function. When it's no slope or undefined, it's going to be x equals. So that's considered not a function. So when I graph a zero slope, remember that's just a horizontal line. This here equation really means 0x plus 2. So we have a y-intercept of a positive 2, but we don't have any slope. So we don't have any slope. So all we do is we draw a horizontal line on that coordinate. Okay, so here it's -3, so I go to where it's -3 on the y-axis, because it's y equals, and then I draw a horizontal line there. Okay, remember the no slope or undefined should be a vertical line. So when I'm looking at this one, instead of my starting point being on the y-axis, it's going to be on the x. So 1, 2, 3, 4, here's my point, but now instead of drawing a horizontal line, I'm drawing a vertical line. Okay, so at x equals -4, again, instead of a horizontal line, it's a vertical line. Why don't you give these two a try? So go ahead and pause the video and try these two. Hopefully at this time you've paused the video and you've worked that out. So let's see how you did. Okay, so y equals 3 should be a horizontal line because this is a zero slope. And then x equals -4 is undefined. So it should be a vertical line. Okay, at this time you are ready to move on to your next assignment. If you have any questions, please make sure you get them answered.